Hey guys, hope you are all doing well today. So we have a matchup between the Empire going up against the forces of the Lizardmen. So this is a matchup that, as a Lizardmen player, initially I never really had any doubts about. I thought that Lizardmen had a pretty good chance of beating down the Empire forces. There weren't really too many obstacles standing in the way of that. But then I started seeing this guy in more and more matchups. Karl Franz. He is like an army in and of himself, with Reichland Runefang and Galmaraz, which I believe both this player has brought. Yeah, with both of those, he has the ability to goon out pretty much every lord in the game, probably even Kolek, honestly. I'm not sure, that's something we'll have to test, but like Kolek, probably the most powerful combat lord in the game, but with Galmaraz and Reichland Runefang popped on Karl Franz, I bet he could take him out. And so I started noticing him in a lot more matchups, and he is just such a beast, and I've started to struggle a lot more against Empire just because of this guy. Of course, one of the most powerful pairings in the game is of course Jade Wizard and Karl Franz, so that Jade Wizard does bring quite a bit of healing that Karl Franz could use if he is in an extended fight, which he seems to be losing. Anyways, for the rest of the Lizardmen army, so we have a front line of Skink cohort along with some red crested skinks, one of which is the cohort of Sotek. We have 2 units of Chameleon Skinks Vanguard deployed who will do a decent job of peppering down units over the course of the battle. Of course, I want their ideal target to be Karl Franz. 3 units of Kroxigors just to add some mass to beat down the front line and maybe wade through and potentially hit these handgunners as quickly as possible. 1 unit of the Umbral Tide, really good at dealing with large units such as the Empire Knights or Demigryph Knights, which are deployed on the flank, as you can see. We have 1 unit of Coldwood Spear Riders just to protect the Umbral Tide. We have a Skink Priest of Heavens coming in with the Wind Blast and Curse of the Midnight Wind. Curse of the Midnight Wind is actually really important in trying to take down Karl Franz. It gives minus 30 armor and minus 24 melee attack, I believe. And so anytime Karl Franz lands, you pop a Curse of the Midnight Wind and he loses a bit of his punch. And of course, for the Lizardmen Lord, I went with the toughest Lord available to the Lizardmen in this battle. So we have Gorok. He is honestly one of the toughest foot lords to take down in the game. Of course, as I just mentioned, Kolek being probably the best. Gorok will be shortly behind him. He is just such a beast with a silver shield, 100 armor, with 45 melee attack and 60 melee defense. He is just so hard to take down, and he doesn't even have a mount. So, probably the hardest lord for Karl Franz to goon out, but of course, with both those items popped on him, he can win that battle. And yeah, that seems to be it for the Lizardmen army, so let's move on to the forces of the Empire. So, a front line of just standard spearmen will be holding out decently well against Skink cohort, but with the sheer number of skinks that the Lizardmen are bringing, they will not fare too well in this battle. Of course, with the Empire, you can never depend on your infantry to win the fight. We have 2 units of handgunners just to bring some armor-piercing missiles to try and destroy some of those dinos. We have Karl Franz, of course, and a Jade Wizard just to add some healing. And for artillery, we have the Hammer of the Witches, the Regiment of Renowned Great Cannons, bringing some extra anti-large to the fight. We have 2 units of Empire Knights, good for skirmishing down, well not skirmishing, good for like cyclo-charging the Lizardmen infantry to death, especially since none of them have any charge defense. Skinks don't really fare well against cavalry. And on the right flank we have 1 unit of Demigryph Knights with halberds, combined with a Warrior Priest coming in with a couple battle prayers, such as the Shield of Faith, Soulfire, and the Hammer of Sigmar, and Benediction will be giving some extra leadership. And yeah, that seems to be pretty much it for the Empire forces, so let's get this battle underway. Of course, since the Empire does possess cavalry, the Lizardmen, not cavalry, artillery, the Lizardmen are forced to approach. Handgunners really should be aiming more at the Feral Bastildon, which is heavily armored, so going to be quite tough to take down. they initially were aiming at some of the skink cohort, which are shielded, so probably not the greatest choice for them. And the lines now approach, of course, as I mentioned. The Lizardmen are going to be winning the front line pretty handily. Already we have Cold One Spear Riders penetrating the back lines, but I have to pull them out instantly because I realize that the Empire has some troops in the flank waiting to take down the Umbral Tide, and I really need to keep something on standby to protect these costly salamanders. But we do manage to get one unit of the skink cohort into the back lines. A wind blast does go down on some of these handgunners, but a great dodge. Let's see, the front line pretty much collapsed for the Empire. Again, can't really expect spearmen to hold out against the immense pressure that the Lizardmen are putting, and these Hammer of the Witches will be soon shut down. Unfortunately, I do not notice the fact that these Demigryph Knights, along with the Warrior Priest, were getting a rear charge into the Umbral Tide because Karl Franz had landed, and we actually managed to do a ton of damage to him. The Umbral Tide combined with these Cold One Spear Riders managed to almost knock him out of the battle, but the Jade Wizard was there, ready to provide some healing in the form of a regrowth. Great Cannon still firing out somehow, even with a Feral Bastildon upon him, and in the back we have Cold One Spear Riders dueling it out with Demigryph Knights with halberds. Of course the Demigryph Knights would win with their dedicated anti-large, but they will be skirmished down a little bit by the Chameleon Skinks. We have some of the Umbral Tide potentially shooting shots in. They were heavily weakened by the rear charges that the Demigryph Knights did, and so yeah. Again, protecting the Umbral Tide was gonna be tough in the first from the beginning, but with the Cold One Spear Riders routing from the battle, there's practically nothing left to save these guys from the might of the Demigryph Knights. But the rest of the battle is going relatively well for the force of the Lizardmen. They've managed to rout most of the handgunners. Actually, one is still left, but getting shut down by croc scores. Karl Franz, now all healed up, has done a rear charge into the skink cohort, completely decimating their ranks and terrifying them off the battlefield, leaving a unit of croc scores to deal with 3 units of the Empire. They will not be faring well at all. Halberdiers are trying to pick up some of the slack that the spearmen may have missed, for spearmen were bogged down or instantly destroyed at the beginning of the match, but the halberdiers with their dedicated anti-large are doing a good job of shutting down the croc scores along with the Bastildon. The Umbral Tide somehow manages to survive the pursuit from the Demigryph Knights, but they are just so weak at this point. 9 models. Their fireballs really won't be doing the most damage. On the other hand, the Chameleon Skinks, actually one Chameleon Skink, is still at a relatively decent amount of ammunition and models, but they are going to be rear charged by some of these Demigryph Knights. The Umbral Tide, noticing that this charge was coming in from the Demigryphs, do decide to run away and potentially use these croc scores to win that fight. Gorok is still at full HP, so even if we have Karl Franz land on him, he is going to be very tough to kill out. Probably the toughest Lizardman Lord, in my opinion, to goon out by Karl Franz. Another Wind Blast coming into some of these handgunners, but they do remain in the fight, though they are wavering. But they have managed to rout one unit of Crossdoors along with the Skink cohort, the Salamander Hunting Pack, still doing some valuable shots into the back of Karl Franz. Again, he is such a beast. Taking any of his HP down is going to be vital in this matchup. And I think the one big mistake that the Lizardmen have made is not fully chasing off the Jade Wizard. So all of the healing that the Empire has is still available to them. The Demigryph Knights are coming in for another rear charge on the Umbral Tide, maybe? Seems like they will retreat behind some of the Skink cohort. The Battle Priest, where is that guy? I believe he's still healthy. Yeah, here he is. He's also pretty healthy himself, fighting off a unit of Skink cohort. So if they decide to if Karl Franz and him decide to goon up on Gorok, of course they will be winning that fight handily. And a huge Curse the Midnight Wind does get popped here, giving these cohort of Sotek along with these Chameleon Skinks a chance to take down Karl Franz, and it's actually working really well. He's losing a ton of HP. The lowly Skinks are somehow taking down the greatest of the Empire Lords, and again he is forced to run away. And the Jade Wizard is standing by, ready to give him some more healing, and that's really the biggest problem for the Lizardmen in this battle, is that they really weren't able to shut down the Jade Wizard, and so Karl Franz every time was just able to retreat with barely any HP and get healed back up and ready to fight again. Which is why I consider this combo, the Jade Wizard plus Karl Franz, to be one of the most dangerous Lord-Hero combinations in the game. Empire Knights doing a good job of shutting down the remainder of the Commune Skinks. They are really going to be poisoning Karl Franz down, and so getting them off the field could be vital for the Empire. We have the Skink Priest of Heavens attempting to shut down some of the Great Cannons who have returned to the fight, but of course they are surrounded by Halberdiers along with the Jade Wizard, and the cohort of Sotek does come to back them up, but I'm not sure that the Jade Wizard will be able to survive without some backup, which is coming in the form of Gorok and some Kroxigors. Seems like the Umbral still getting some of their shots off. Luckily they did use most of their ammunition, so they weren't completely wasted in this battle, but the fact that they only had 9 models meant that the damage that they did was not enough to make a huge difference. They can actually probably beat off this unit of Empire Knights. They're definitely very good in melee with 32 melee attack and 29 melee defense. They will be winning that fight. Karl Franz still relatively weak, and we did manage to rout off the Jade Wizard, but if the Jade Wizard returns, Karl Franz will be getting an upgraded regrowth on him with over 2000 HP, and at that point this battle will be looking relatively well for the Empire, but right now the balance of power is heavily Lizardmen favored, and I'm pretty happy with how this battle is going. Most of the balance of power is situated around the Warrior Priest, and my Lord as Gorok is very, very healthy. Salamander's getting some last shots into Karl Franz, but he does manage to escape, leaving Gorok. I accidentally popped all his buffs because I thought he'd be able to catch Karl Franz, but of course he does get away. With how much HP? Of course, 475 HP. There are a lot of Empire forces still left though, who were retreating initially due to the fact that Kroxigors along with Skinks absolutely hammed on them at the beginning of the game, but now they will be slowly but surely making their way back. Seems like some Demigryph Knights are also attempting to take down some of the cohort of Sotek. They're more, ideally they're more situated to take out large units, but there's really nothing large left on the battlefield for them to take out, so really just cycle charging anything is good enough for them. I attempt to use Commune Skinks to try and take out Karl Franz, but here he goes. The Jade Wizard has returned, and there you go, an upgraded regrowth, pushing the balance of power further and further towards the Empire's favor. Of course, Gorok, still very healthy, and can probably put up a decent duel against the great Empire Lord. Along with all the accessories of the Empire coming back with Spearmen, Halberdiers, we have some Knights. Actually, the Knights are broken. Yeah, Demigryph Knights and the Empire Knights are broken. But, of course, as I mentioned at the beginning of the game, Karl Franz is an army in and of himself. I may be overrating him, honestly, but he is just so powerful. We have a Skink Priest of Heavens. He's actually going to be vital in the endgame, because his Curse the Midnight Wind could be the death of Karl Franz anytime he lands. Another big strength for the Empire is the fact that this Warrior Priest is still around, so he will be providing some buffs to any Empire infantry that are returning to the fight. He also does have, what is it called? Soulfire. Yeah, Soulfire is good at taking out Lizardmen infantry, which really only is going to be the cohort of Sotek along with the Commune Skinks. Gorok will do a decent job of taking down the Warrior Priest, but at this point Karl Franz is just going to come in for some cycle charging, and he has Galmaraz popped on him, he has Reiklin Runefang popped on him, and look how much damage he's going to do. Oh man, just completely destroying Gorok. Look, he almost lost half HP in a matter of 10 seconds. That is just how powerful Karl Franz can be, and he is just leaving, barely taking any damage himself, still at his healing cap, going back into the skies and going in for some more cycle charging where he can completely obliterate Gorok again. That's what I'm saying. Like, he is just an army in and of himself. I said that 3 times already, but still, he is just impossible to take out in the late game if you still have a Jade Wizard, which actually seems like the Jade Wizard was chased off, but not before doing the damage of a upgraded regrowth on Karl Franz. And so at this point, the Lizardmen forces are just trying to shore up around Gorak. If he gets charged again, potentially try and surround Karl Franz and win the battle that way. Unfortunately, the Warrior Priest has returned, so one of his... what is that bombardment spell called again? Yes, if a Soulfire does come down on the bunched up Lizardmen infantry, that could prove to be fatal. Another Wind Blast coming into some of these Halberdiers. Doing some decent damage, but they won't be routing from the field yet. And the Skink Priest of Heaven still have a little bit of Winds of Magic left, able to potentially put one more Curse of the Midnight Wind, and here comes the final engagement. Karl Franz going up against Gorak with a Curse of the Midnight Wind pop. Will this be enough? Gorak pops a Rock of Itza, giving him 44% damage resistance, but will it be enough? Karl Franz still not losing much HP at all. Skink Priest of Heavens, really nothing left to do with him, so I just charge him into battle and he routs pretty much instantly, and the rest of the Lizardmen forces are being terror routed off the field. And with that, the Empire somehow managed to pull this battle back with the help of the legend himself, Karl Franz. So a very well played battle to the Empire player. Definitely my fault for not chasing out the Jade Wizard. That Jade Wizard was honestly more important than Karl Franz himself. All that healing he gave really was the reason that the Empire were able to win this fight in the first place. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this battle. Remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the content, and I will see you guys in the next one.